Hello and welcome to another live Linux walkthrough. Now, have you ever, like myself, enjoyed playing around with Manjaro, Manjaro, yeah, and thought to yourself, yeah, I do like this, but it seems a bit bloated. There's an awful lot of software on here that I'm either not going to use or just simply, well, why is it on here to begin with, to be honest? And why can't I install this bit of software? And yeah, do I really need it, basically? Well, I've got some good news for you because, believe it or not, there is a minimal version of Manjaro that you can actually download and customize yourself. Now, before I introduce you to that, let's talk about what you can do with this minimal install. So you've got the option to basically have kernel control. You can have control over which packages you want to install. And you've also got the opportunity as well to allow this software to decide whether you're going to sit on the unstable, the testing, or the daily branch of the Manjaro system. Either way, you'll still have Manjaro, but obviously you'll have a bit more greater control over what you install. And if you install this, then, well, yeah, you're basically starting from scratch. So with Arch, if you have ever downloaded that and tried, I still can't get Arch to work my way. I don't know why. I must be doing something wrong, or when it gets to the final stages where it installs grub and everything else, it just basically fails on me. So Arch, me trying to install vanilla Arch, I gave up months ago on that one there. So if I want to use Arch, then I'm always constantly now turning towards Endeavour, Arch Labs, and Manjaro. Now, when I looked at Manjaro the other day, I was having a look around some of their community and stable packages there, and I came across a download called Architect. So there is a Manjaro Live ISO where basically now you choose which kernel you want to use, or you can actually use multiple kernels if you wanted to. So here, you can, as I said, choose whether you want to be on the stable, testing or unstable branches of their system. You can choose your desktop from the current Manjaro editions, regardless of what install media you run the installer from. So you can have your XFCE, your GNOME, your KDE Plasma, your Budgie, your Awesome, whatever you like. Basically, it's up to you what desktop environment you install. It also adds any unconfigured desktop environments. So basically, you will be getting vanilla at the end of the day. It enables you to choose the default shell for the user, so you can choose whether or not to use bash, ZSH, or fish. Most commonly, people tend to use bash, but if you're a bit of a ZSH user, then you've got the option to select that there. You can also choose your graphic drivers as well to be installed using MHWD. So we'll be taking a look at that as well shortly. And also you've got the option to choose extra packages as well that you want to be installed. And we hopefully will see some of that during the installation process here today. So I've already downloaded and loaded up this ISO in a virtual machine. So let's give this a look here. So I've got here loaded up into my QEMUV virtual manager here, Manjaro-Architect. So let's take a look at what we're going to do here. So let me just go full screen with this one here to help you out here. So this is what you get when you load the ISO for the very first time. So basically, it's literally like you've downloaded and installed and want to run Arch. You are basically just left with a command view, basically, or a CLI, as they like to call it, a command line. So the good thing about this one is when you load it for the first time, it does actually tell you what the username and password is. So in order to get the setup on the go, we actually need to obviously first of all log in as the root user, and as you can see here we've got Manjaro and Manjaro set as the user and password, and then when we get logged in we need to just basically run the command setup. So let's give that a go now. So we type in Manjaro, enter, and our password is Manjaro, enter, and now we're left with the command prompt here. So it's here now that we just type in setup. And now we are going to go through the installation process. Now, at the moment, I'm seeing an error message. We are just going to ignore that one because it's obviously trying to refresh the core database from the mirrors. Hopefully in a moment we will see, here we go, see it's doing it now. It will try to attempt to connect to some of the localized mirrors that it can find here. So at the moment it's connecting to a mirror based in, I don't know, Honolulu, I think maybe, with .hu. I'm never really any good with these domain extensions, but it will go off and look for all of the community mirrors and see which ones are available to you. There's a lot of failures and errors coming through here, but as it sort of starts to settle down, you can begin to see how the packages are starting to download here. So we'll just give this a few moments to stabilize itself, and in a few moments time we should actually hit a screen which then basically starts the installation process. So we'll just let this screen run through here, and we'll be back when we've reached the first screen here. Okay, so after some time, we finally now reached the first of our setup screens, and it's here now we're going to select our language. So straight away it's selected English by default, but obviously you've then got other choices here. So I'm just going to select English by pressing enter. First of all, I need to click into the screen. There we go. All checks have now passed, and it's now updating the system database. As you can see now, it's synchronizing all of the package databases. So this will be, if you were running Arch, you would normally run the command, of course, sudo pacman-syu. So that's basically now what this is doing in the back end. So it's now going to refresh and get all of what it needs to basically start the installation. As you can see here, the core, the extra, and the community databases are now up to date. Again, we just give that a few moments to settle down, and then we should be on to the next screen. Here we go. So we're now onto the welcome screen. Welcome to Manjaro-Architect installer version 0.9.33. That is the latest version at the time of this recording, which is today, October the 9th, 2020. So this installer will download the latest packages from the Manjaro repositories. There'll be various menu options, of course, as we go through this process, but select by pressing the option number or by using the up and down arrow keys, and then of course enter to confirm. You can also as well, during the selections, as I've noticed in previous installations, you can actually press your spacebar, and then that will put like an asterisk next to the selection that you want there. And for configuration and package options, the default packages in the checklists will obviously be pre-checked as well as we go through this, and you can use the spacebar to select, of course, or deselect as we go through the process. So we press enter to OK that. And now we're going to prepare the installation. Press enter again. And I am in a virtual machine here, but either way, if you install this on hardware, it will also say set virtual console. So we need to do that first of all. Press enter again. Now the currently selected console is basically set up for the US. I'm not in the US, of course, I'm in the UK, so I need to set that to English. So I need to just press my right arrow on the keyboard to come across to change, press enter, and I'm going to scroll through the list until I get to UK. Nearly there. There we go. So I select UK and press enter. And it's now that I need to list my devices. Now it's got optional in brackets, but I'm just going to list the devices because I just need to see what's there. So we have a virtual disk, which is currently sitting here at 25 gigabytes, and that's what it will mount. Of course, if you install it on larger disks, then you'll have hopefully the full disk selected there, and if not, then you'll need to just obviously go back on yourselves and try and see what you can do by going through the installer process again. So we just go back, and we are now going to partition our disk on option 3, so press enter again. And because I've got a 25 gigabyte virtual hard disk here selected, this will now mount and partition the full drive. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to be on /dev/VDA on a 25 gigabyte drive, so press OK. And I'm going to either securely wipe the device. Now that's obviously advisable if you're going to be doing a clean install on existing hardware. But what I'm going to do is automatically partition this. So what I will just see in a moment is an option where it will install a boot partition of 512 megabytes. That's required, so basically it can store all of the EUFI details, of course, in there, or UEFI, sorry, and it will also set up a root partition for you. So do you want to continue? Yes, we do. And now that's going to, it hasn't done it yet, but it's suggesting to you this is what will happen. So it will separate my 25 gigabytes out into a 512 megabyte boot partition, and then the rest of the drive will be remaining there as my data. So I'm happy with that, so I'll click back. We don't need to install a RAID, so I'm just going to skip that. I don't want to do logical volume, and I don't want to do a Luke's encryption, so or even a ZFS. So I'm just going now to skip forward to option 8, which is to mount the partitions. And here we, of course, will be mounting the partitions without formatting. But you can, if you don't want to format, you can obviously select Do Not Format. But ensure that the correct choices for mounting and formatting are made, as no warnings will be provided, so just be warned here. Please note and be careful and know what you're doing. So you can see that it's now asking us to select a root partition. This is where Manjaro will be installed. Now you're not going to be able to install it on the currently selected one, so you will need to select VDA2, which is the 24 gigabyte partition. Manjaro will install, and it will be probably about 2 or 3 gigabytes worth. So you can understand that if you even attempted to even touch that 512 megabyte partition, it wouldn't allow it. So we're just going to OK that. Now I've got the option here to choose what my file system will be. So by default, it won't format, and it will leave you with just obviously a blank drive. But obviously, you will know with all the Linux distros that you've tried out and installed over time that by default we use the ext4 format. But coming ahead now into the game is BTRFS, which is known as the B-tree file system. Or Btrfs, as we like to call it in the Linux community. And yeah, that's what the likes of Fedora, the upcoming Fedora 33 will be using. I think we're looking at possibility that maybe Elementary version 6, when it comes out, might also have the option to select Btrfs. Only other distros that I've touched that really give us that option generally is OpenSUSE. So I tried out Fedora 33 the other day and was quite comfortable with the way it was behaving, but to be perfectly honest, it's a filing system. I haven't really got that much experience about what the differences are between ext3 and ext4 and Btrfs, etc. So I would generally leave it set to the default one. But seeing as I've got a lot of experience using ext4, I'm going to select ext4 and then just press enter. Now what that will do is it will mount it, and any data on that partition will be lost. So I'm going to confirm that by pressing yes. And it's here now where we are going to select or deselect the mount options. So I'm going to leave that set to the default no time. So just OK that. And it will say, are you absolutely sure? So this is confirming whether you want to go ahead with that. So I just say yes. And you can see here that the mount was successful. So now, do we want to set up a swap file? Well, in this case, I'm running it in a virtual machine on a 25 gigabyte drive. So I'm going to say no. But if I was to install this on a larger disk, such as 256 or 500 gigabytes, or even a terabyte, then I would set a swap file, and I would select that to either the same size or double the size of my actual RAM that's installed on the machine here. I'm running this in a virtual machine using 4 gigs, so really I don't need to have a swap file. I've got more than enough RAM to help me go through here. Plus, we don't want to be caching anything in RAM as we're doing this because, well, it will cause a whole heap of problems. So we're going to say none to that one and just press enter again. And now we need to select the additional partitions in any order. So we're basically ready, and I'm going to say done to finish this process. And now we're ready to configure the mirror list. So what this will do now is we can edit the Pac-Man configuration and obviously the mirror configuration. So by choosing mirrors, you can obviously set up different countries, specific countries, or you can just let the system do its thing by default. So it contains server addresses, obviously. There'll be IP addresses through to HTTPS and FTPs, etc. The configuration file can be edited at any point using the multi-lib file or any other repositories there. It says here, close text files with Control X if edited. Yeah, that's quite common because obviously you will be taken into Nano as the default text editor. I'm not going to stop any of this, but one thing I will do is rank mirrors by speed. I'm just going to have a look at this file and just taking note of Control X on the keyboard to obviously close the text file. If you edit that, you then need to press Y to obviously save, or then no to obviously discard those changes. So let's take a look at those by speed. Now, this is the point now where you select what branch you want to be on. So if you're quite happy to be part of Manjaro's testing branch, then obviously I would select this, and that's where you'll get the latest and the greatest updates. But they won't be that great, they'll just be as great as in near to actual release, so a release candidate in this case. You can go with unstable, which obviously most developers like to do, but you know, I wouldn't really recommend that unless you really wanted to. Don't run unstable or testing on a production machine. I would stick with stable. So in my case here, I am going to stay with stable. It's already selected, so I just click enter to OK that. And now we can select our custom mirrors using spacebar. So this is now going to download all of the mirrors. So that'd be all of the countries that are available to us. So Australia right through to New Zealand, etc. So we'll just let that refresh itself. And then what that will do is it will hopefully come up with a selection for us to choose what our mirrors will be. So we're just going to let that do that, and we'll be back once that has completed. Okay, so the mirror list there took roughly around about 3 minutes to download and package itself up for me there. It could be a lot quicker if I was actually doing it on actual hardware, but yeah, just to say that if you do go through that process, then you know, just let Manjaro do its thing, and it probably will take anywhere roughly about, you know, anywhere between 2 and 5 minutes to refresh itself there. So we're now left here on the check mirrors page, and it's here now where we can select our mirrors. So I'm just scrolling down the list. So what it's done, it knows I'm basically in the UK, so it has chosen UK, and as you can see from the selection here, the response timings for these will be like 4 milliseconds, so I'll be absolutely great with that one. So to select those, I've got it highlighted here. I'm just going to press my spacebar. You can now see an X has gone against that. I've got another UK server, so again I'm going to select one there, and I'm going to select the other UK server here. There's another one listed here, so I'm just going to select that one also. And just to play safe and to have some European mirrors on standby, I'm just going to select France as my nearest. And then I'm also, just as the next one along, going to select the one in the Netherlands. So we'll just go ahead with that one there. Now, it was my understanding that it wanted us to come out of this screen, so what I've got to do now is, now I've got the selections, I've just pressed my tab key there, and I don't know if you can see this. I might just have to move my camera out of the way just one moment. So if I just do that, you should be able to see on your screen here that if you can roughly see where my mouse pointer is, because it obviously disappears behind the virtual window, there's an OK button there. Now, I will say one thing to the Manjaro developers. If you've got the facility to do so, please try and make that colourful. I wouldn't say the bright green, but at least try to make it white or something along those lines, because I don't think this sort of greyness is working very well for the visually impaired. But you know, I'll leave that down to you guys to resolve the accessibility issue there, but that's just my suggestion. So with the OK button now selected, I'm going to press enter on my keyboard to OK that, and that's now our mirror list selected. So we now need to go back to the screen that we was on beforehand, so we'll go back. And I'm now going to, at this point, refresh the Pacman keys. So what that's going to do now is it's going to run a command where it's going to go off to all of those local mirrors that I've just selected there, and it's going to now go ahead and refresh. And already I can see that it's refreshing 139 keys, and that's already happened and done. So now let's choose our Pacman cache. So do you want to use Pacman cache of the running system instead of the installation target? This can reduce the size of the required downloads in the installation. So basically what this is asking for now is, do you want me to basically download the packages and keep them stored locally so I can run from a local cache? By default, it's suggesting you say yes. So at this point, I am going to say no, because I'm quite happy for my machine to go out there and download what it needs. And now we need to enable the XFCE hook. Not entirely sure what that means, but let's follow that process. Do you want to use XFCE hook? I'll say yes to that. And we go back now. And it's here now we choose our desktop system. So it's here where we can choose what type of desktop we want. So we've got the option to go with Yay and Base Dev. Well, we need that one, definitely. But what kernel do you want to select at this point here now? So I'm going to, by default, select the LTS release because I know that's the latest and the stable. But you've also got the option to choose whether you want to use the latest as well. So as you can see, as I'm going through the list here, you've got the facility to be able to choose which one of these kernels you want. So you can go with the latest, which obviously is kernel 5.9 at the moment, or you can just stick with the LTS. So your installation will download obviously the LTS and the latest versions of the Linux kernels, and will store them for you. And if you're finding when you get booted into the desktop for the first time that you're having some issues, then it could be to do with hardware and the drivers possibly not being supported in an older or a newer version of the kernel. So you've got the option here to use a kernel manager to roll back to an LTS or latest version there. So I'm going to now click OK, and it's here now we can select which desktop environment we want to use. So I'm a lover of the XFCE desktop environment, so I'm just going to select that. But you've also got the opportunity to download another desktop environment as well if you wanted to choose to do so. So I will probably at a later date come back into a package manager and possibility download the Budgie or Cinnamon desktop, but for now and the purposes of this demonstration here today, I'm going to download the latest XFCE 4.14, and we can see how we get on with that one. So that one selected, again pressing spacebar, so I've got the asterisk next to it, and I'll OK that. Would you like to add any additional packages to your installation? I'm going to say no. And it's at this point now where you can choose whether you would like a full installation or a minimal installation. Now this is what I feel possibly drove me towards giving this Architect version of Manjaro a try. Now, if you go with the full version, you will be downloading the full LibreOffice suite, a web browser, and everything else that goes alongside it. But if you go with the minimal version, then you're just going to get the minimal blanket desktop environment, and then the rest is down to you to run some commands. And as we're going to be in Manjaro, you can use the Pacman command line, and also you can use the Pamac to do some add and removal of some software there. So I'm going to, obviously, as I said at the beginning, because it's a minimal demonstration I'm doing for you here today, is choose option 2 here for minimal. And we're now going ahead with the download and the installation. So I am on quite a good internet connection here, not as fast as some of my lovely American friends out there, but either way, still a good connection, and I fully expect this download to happen quite quickly, so we'll just wait and see. But if it goes on for more than a minute, then I will pause this video and return back when that's actually happened. So we'll just leave it here for a moment, and you can see now we're at the point now where it's downloading the Linux firmware. And you can see now we're at the kernel of 5.4. 5.4 is being downloaded. It's now downloading kernel 5.8. And we should now be hopefully on the latest and the LTS coming through now. Yeah, so I can see I've got some NVIDIA drivers coming through. So I can see as part of the package installation there, the latest NVIDIA driver will be 450, which is fantastic. So when I do finally get around to installing this on actual hardware, then I know that my desktop PC will be supported for that. So now it's downloading some audio and video drivers. Here comes now the media codecs. Python, Qt, Bluetooth, fonts, oh hello. That must be quite a big tar file that's downloaded. There we go. Again, more codecs. And now we're getting into the XFCE desktop environment, because I can see we've got Task Manager, plugins, notifiers, and the screenshot tools coming through. It's surprising how over time you get used to the names of the packages here. I can't say I can identify all of them, but I'm pleased to at least be able to identify most that comes down the line here. There's Wayland. G streamers, so I know that that's going to be locally stored to help assist my locally installed browsers when I'm viewing video on the internet. And now it's checking some key rings and some package integrities. So what that's now doing is basically doing some validations. And we must be nearly there. Very nearly. So whilst this is just doing some validations and some checks, I will just pause the video and I'll be back when we get to the next screen. Okay, so that didn't really take too long to get moving on to the next screen. So now it's going through the actual installation. So it's downloaded all of the packages and now it is unpacking those and installing them for me. And I'm quite surprised to see how quickly this is happening. Now, I will say one thing about Linux, and you can disagree with me or you can agree with me. I don't really care, to be honest. But however, the one thing that does excite me most when I'm using Linux is actually looking at each command line going through the terminal like it's doing right now. And you can actually see what's going on. Now, when you download and install a software on Windows or Mac, for example, you generally just see a bar going across the screen and you're not actually sure what's going on. Yeah, it might look graphically great, but the bar just keeps going and going and going and going and going. You don't actually know what the progress is, do you? At least here, when you install something in Linux and you can see what's going on, you kind of in your mind know how far through the installation it is, even though it's not actually saying how much percentage it's through at the moment in time. But right now I can see that it is definitely installing the XFCE desktop because it's putting all of the theming now together, and it's installing the icon set, and it's rebuilding all of the certifications and the module dependencies. So a device manager, it says, is not running at the moment, but that will run when we do the first time login. So I can see that it's now set up the Network Time Protocol, or NTP as it's known. So at least now I know when I log in that it will go off to the internet and actually make sure that I've got the correct time and date. As one thing that's really annoying me with Windows at the moment is every time I log into Windows, my clock seems to be an hour behind. Now I know we're currently in British summer time, which means we are in daylight savings time at the moment, which means we are an hour ahead. But even so, I mean, come on, Microsoft, why? Is it that my BIOS is a few seconds out, or you need to actually have that internet connection to actually sync up and get me the right time? I mean, come on, you should know what the date is in that particular calendar year, and you should know that of the time that it was last set at when I shut down that machine, that when I next boot up, it should automatically remember where I was. Yeah. It shouldn't really have to go off to the internet to do its next sync until possibly a few hours into me being booted up. So now it has compiled a list of the local mirrors, and it is here now where we can auto install the free drivers. Now, this is the display driver, so this is the point now where you have to consider whether or not you're using NVIDIA or whether you have got an AMD graphics card. Now, I've got an NVIDIA card in my machine, but because I'm using this in a virtual machine at the moment, it doesn't really matter if I'm using the free or the proprietary drivers. So I'm going to do the auto install of the free drivers because that's all that really is required for me in this virtual window. So I have selected auto install, but I might have to bring my cursor back in here because obviously I've clicked away from the main window. So if I do that now, yeah, that's better. So that's going to now install the video graphics that it needs to run in my virtual machine. You can see at the top just before it disappears that it's installing the video driver for virtual machine. And it's done it successfully, and now it says press enter to continue. And now I'm going to install a bootloader. So here's now where we get to install Grub. So do you want just Grub on its own, or do you want Grub and OS Prober? Now, OS Prober is needed for automatic detection of already installed systems on other partitions. So if you are like some I know, where you have more than one Linux distribution or Windows installed on your machine, if you're running those side by side, please do at this point select Grub and OS Prober. In my case, I am just installing this as a straight install, so I only need Grub, so just bear that in mind. Now it is obviously checking for the locally installed hard disks and USB sticks. So if I've got a USB stick in my machine right now, that would be listed here. The reason why it needs this is because you need to tell this screen where am I going to go to find your local install of Manjaro. So I only have the one device and the one drive in here, so that dev VDA of my 25 gig selected drive is obviously where I want to boot into, so that's fine. And now it's going through installing some dependencies and installing Grub. So the Grub screen is where we select the operating system and which kernel we want to use. So you will see that when you first log in. So you can see now that just briefly quickly there, that it found some Linux headers there, which obviously we're going to obviously select in the Grub screen when we do the first boot. So now we configure the base. And do you want to generate the fstab, set the host name, set the locale, set the keyboard layout, etc. So generate fstab. We do want the actual device to be UUID, so I'm going to select that. My host name I'm going to call Manjaro, but you can call it Robin's Desktop or anything you like that. Basically, that's the name of the machine that will appear on your local network. And I'm going to set the system locale to be English, but as you can see by default US UTF is selected there, but I need to ensure I've got English GB selected for my keyboard locale. And what is my keyboard? So my country will be English GB UTF-8, so I'm going to select that. So I'm going to select my keyboard layout now and say that I am GB in Great Britain. And I'm going to set the time zone and clock. So my time zone is Europe. So if you want to scroll up and down this big long list, you can do, but you can use your keyboard. And you can see that all of the first letters are highlighted here. So you can use a keyboard shortcut E to jump to Europe, press enter. And this list is so long. So if I want to select London, I just set L and I come to Lisbon. And next I can scroll down the list until I get to London and then press enter. So do you want now to confirm that you are setting your time zone up to be Europe, London? Yes, I do. And it's here now where I can say, am I going to use UTC or my local time? So UTC at the moment, as I said, I'm in British summertime or daylight savings at the moment. So therefore I'm 1 hour ahead of myself. So if I selected UTC, then I would be using Greenwich Mean Time, or GMT, obviously being 0 hours at the end of the day. But for the moment, I'm going to select local time. And now I'm going to set a root password. Now, you don't have to set a root password, but it's advisable. So that way, for security purposes, when you want to install new packages or run certain commands that requires administration, obviously privileges, then it's here that you can select that root password. I don't really need a root password, so I'm just going to OK that and OK that. The new password, retype the new password, that has now been supplied. So now I'm going to set up a new user. So here it is now where I set up my user account. So it's here now where I'm going to type in Robin. Now, what kind of shell am I going to use? Now, as I explained earlier on, you've got obviously ZSH. That's default. That's why that's been selected here. But you've got bash and fish. So bash is the common one. So I'm going to select bash and then I'm going to press OK. And now I need to enter a password. So let me now enter in what's going to be my super secret safe password. And it's now creating the user and setting up my user groups. Basically, we have now reached the final stages of the installation. So now we go back. And it's here now we're going to do some system tweaks. Do you want to enable automatic logging? Do you want to enable hibernation? Do you want to check performance? Do you want to do security and system tweaks? So if I look at performance, you can schedule in some tasks. I don't need to do that, but you've got the option there to obviously do some swap configuration or schedule in some checks on your I/O there. I/O, of course, being your input-output devices, so things like your graphics cards, your network drives, etc. You can obviously set that all up here. So let's do security and system D tweaks. So you can amend the journal D login. I'm not entirely sure what that is. I've not really had to ever come across that. You can disable the core dump login, or you can restrict access to certain kernel logs as well. That's great that it's there, and I would say that's more for the network security experts amongst us, but in my case, no. So I'm just going to go back on that one, and I'm going to go back now on this screen. And we've done the system tweaks. We are nearly there. We are very nearly there. So let's now check the configuration files if we look at those. So you've got the option at this point now to look at these at obviously text editor level to make sure everything is set as you want it to. Incidentally, just to point out, because I've selected XFCE as my default desktop environment, it has selected and chosen LightDM for its window manager. So I'm okay with that, so I'll just cancel from this. And do you want to chroot into your installation? Not really needed. So if I go back on this one, you can install the command line system. We don't need to do that. We can install a custom system. Well, we don't need to do that either because we've already selected install desktop system. So you can do a system rescue as well, but we're ready. So I can go done. Do you wish to close the installer? Yes, indeed. Right. Now, what this is going to do now is save an installation log. And you can see here that we can access that in the mount folder on our root partition. So do you want to save the installation log? I'm going to say yes to that. And here we are now back at the command prompt. So it is now a case of us just going sudo reboot. And we are now obviously shutting down the machine and restarting back again. So that's the reason why it just brought me back to my desktop here, because obviously I'm in a virtual machine. So if I just go back to being full screen, in a moment we should see the system booting up as we are right here, right now. And we should have an actual login screen. Wait for it. Ta-da! Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Manjaro-Architect minimal install with XFCE desktop. We did it. So there's still some more configurations we need to do. So this is the very first time that we've logged in. So if I just enter in my super secret safe password, you can see that the screen by default has gone 1024 by 768 in terms of resolution. That's more to do with my display driver and the fact that I'm using this in a virtual machine. So just before I go any further, I'm just going to go into the start menu, and if I do display, I am just going to see from this whether or not I can actually change the resolution to my 1920 by 1080. Yes, I can. So if I select that and hit apply, we should now have a full screen Manjaro XFCE. Keep the configuration, close that down, and you can see now we have a welcome screen. Welcome to Manjaro 20.1.1 Mikah. We did it. Yes. So here we are. Now, I could have just downloaded Manjaro XFCE and installed it, and I'd still have exactly what I see in front of me here. But there would be so much bloatware on there, and it'll be Manjaro forcing packages and software on me that really I don't have a need for. So one way to test this now we are booted up is if I do hit the start menu and I go into something like Office. I don't have LibreOffice installed. That's fine, because Manjaro really doesn't install Office anyway. Now you get the options during setup what kind of Office suite you want. But if I look at Internet, I have Firefox. There's no Chromium. There's no Vivaldi, etc. Again, I can go off and get that. If I look at graphics, I have no GIMP. If I look at accessories, I've got all the accessories that I need to be able to help me set up my machine for the first time here. But to be perfectly honest, this is exactly what I would expect to be able to do to set up my own version of Manjaro. And to be honest, if I look at this, yeah, there's not much comparison to that and the actual XFCE download, which I could have just installed off of a USB key, to be perfectly honest. But I feel honoured, pleased and happy that I've been able to use Manjaro-Architect to actually build my own version of Manjaro using the XFCE desktop. And I could have, of course, chosen to do GNOME and Budgie and all of the other desktop environments, but I chose XFCE because I like XFCE. I use it a lot, and to be honest, my hardware loves XFCE. And even though I'm in a virtual machine, I think it's running quite smooth at the moment. So what we don't seem to have here is obviously a way to be able to add and remove software, I think. So let me just have a look under all applications. Oh yes, we do. Oh, so this looks like then, apologies because it's been quite a while since I've touched Manjaro, that we have the PAMAC software installed. So this enables us now to go and make a connection with the AUR, the Arch User Repository. So if we go into Preferences here and enter in my super secret safe password, we should now have the option to automatically download updates. I do like that. I like to hide the tray icon when no update is available. So at the moment you can see down here in the bottom right hand corner just about that there is a tick in a shield at the moment. That means that I'm protected, but I can hide that icon once I've come out of this. Under advanced, I can ask it to check available disk space. That's fine. I can also ask it to remove unrequired dependencies. I like to keep a nice tidy desktop here. And under official repositories, yeah, we're looking at mirrors from worldwide, but you've got the option to refresh the mirror list and again choose your localized mirror. But we've already told the system that when it's looking for updates for Manjaro itself, that it will be looking at the UK mirror there, so it shouldn't have too much of an issue there. And here we have the Arch User Repository, which is turned off by default, so I'm going to turn that on and I'm going to ask it to check for updates and also keep packages in cache. Now, do you remember when we went through that installation process a short while ago? It was asking you about localized caching. Well, basically that's this option here, which, because I said no, it's installed it and turned it off by default here. So I'm just going to leave that like that. But if we go look under cache now, what this is going to do is, well, you tell it how many versions of a package you want to keep on your system before it wipes it, basically. So when a newer version of a package comes along, it will look at how many versions you already got basically hiding in the back end, and then when a newer version comes in, it wipes out the other one, basically. So if I've selected 3, there's 3 there at the moment, new one comes in, so fourth one, that knocks the last one off, basically. So you can say remove only the versions of uninstalled packages. So that's what I'm going to select, and I'm going to leave 3 versions of each package there, but you've got the option to obviously select more or less. Some people I know like to just leave 1 version on there, but I think 3 is okay by default. And because I've done a clean install, I currently have no cache there, so that's the reason why the clean cache icon is currently grayed out to me. So I'm happy with that. I click close, and if I close down now the package manager, I should now, if I hover over this, well, next time I log in, that icon will disappear. In fact, yeah, because it's just, if I just clicked it, it's just pulled up the package manager again. So let's see how this works. So if I go to updates now, I'm up to date because it's a clean install and it done those downloads of the packages that I selected during the installation process. So under browse, I'm just going to see if Vivaldi is in there. So Vivaldi's got its media codecs in there, which is fine. But if you do Vivaldi as an actual browser, yep, we've got Vivaldi here. So I can download that. So you select build. It's an unpackaged version of the software. So think of it like a zip file, basically. So you have to build that zip file, download it, and then unpackage it, which is basically what it's doing now. And that's the reason why it's asking me for my password here now, because it has to download it and then unpackage it, because it has to access files within your root drive, for example. So just showing you as an example here of me actually downloading a new browser and installing that browser, and you follow the same process for any of your other bits of software that you want to install. So I'm going to be downloading things like Audacity, GIMP, Kdenlive, Shotwell, another browser perhaps, because obviously I'm a bit of a developer, and OBS, obviously, you know, which is obviously what I'm recording this video in here today, right now, on another distribution, obviously outside of my virtual window. So you can see here now that because we've now got the remove red button and there's no more prompts on the screen, that Vivaldi 3.3.2022 is now available for us to use. So scroll that, cancel that out, and if I go into the start menu and I go under internet now, you can see that Vivaldi is installed, and I'll just run that for you now for the first time, and you can see we have Vivaldi loaded. Beautiful. So one last thing for me to do now is have a look at the terminal. So let's see if a Control-Alt-T loads up a terminal. No, it doesn't. Does a Super T load up a terminal? Oh, Control-T has loaded up a full screen terminal. Okay, so this must be Tilda, if I am not too mistaken. Oh, it's the XFCE terminal. Okay, but it's loaded it at the top of the screen, interestingly. And you can see here, because I've loaded up Vivaldi for the first time, that it wants some proprietary drivers, which obviously it will need in order for me to be able to play any media. So I will do that offline. So yeah, the terminal is open down here. So if I click that, here we go. So let me just see if NeoFetch is installed. I don't think it is. Nope, it's not. So to install NeoFetch, and we can see what our hardware and system is like, sudo pacman -s NeoFetch, and we enter in our password. It's got some dependencies, so we say yes to that. Job done. Let me just get rid of the welcome screen here for the moment. There we go. Okay, so if I now run NeoFetch, can see here, we're running a beautiful 849 megabytes at the moment, with obviously inside a virtual machine. So outside of a virtual machine, I'm expecting to see less than that, which is fantastic. So you can see here we're running the XFCE desktop on 4.14. And we're using the Matcha-C and the Papyrus Maya icon theme set there, which is good. And yeah, everything's running smoothly as I would expect it to on a minimal install of Manjaro. So the next thing for me to just try out here is to see if HTOP is installed, and it is. And again, HTOP is telling us of my 2 cores and my 4 gig RAM. I am running at just under a gig, which is fantastic. And we've been up and running 10 minutes now, which is brilliant. So there you have it. We have installed Manjaro XFCE using the Architect download, which is fantastic. So using Manjaro-Architect is a nice, easy way for you to install the Manjaro that you want to work and run with, basically. So there you go. Thank you very much for joining us here for this video here today. We do more walkthroughs obviously throughout the year, and obviously as more betas and live versions of distributions come about. As we're in the month of October, we're currently testing out Fedora 33, and we are about to make a start on testing out the Ubuntu flavors. I've been touching on the main Ubuntu 2010 release this last week, the Groovy Gorilla. So we'll be probably doing a review of that, no doubt, in the coming days. But thank you very much for watching this review and this live walkthrough of Manjaro-Architect with the XFCE 4.14 desktop. If you want to come and follow us, don't forget to like and hit the bell, and you'll be notified as and when we upload more videos. You can follow me over there on Twitter at RobinJust. That's RobinJuste. And of course, as part of a localized contributor here in the UK, you can follow me each and every month as I join the Big Daddy Linux community over there for the European edition. That is a 2-hour podcast which runs on the Big Daddy Linux communities there. And yeah, I'm part of that as a local contributor here in the UK. And that airs on the second Saturday of every month. So just follow us over there, bigdaddylinux.com. I've been Robin, thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you again in the next walkthrough.